WB4BOR ham radio. Let's get started. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. WB4BOR here, and today's YouTube video is about writing your own plugins for APRSD, so that way you can do your new super awesome thing that you need to do when talking with your ham radio. Alright, so today I have some slides to show you to accompany the walkthrough of creating your APRSD plugin project, setting the environment up and showing you what the plugin actually looks like in terms of source code, and testing it, and then if we're lucky, publishing it as well. So let's get right to it. Alright, so we have some requirements. APRSD is written in Python, so the plugins are written in Python, and the requirements for that are that we have to be Python 3.6 or greater, and I assume that you have some basic knowledge as to how to install Python on your operating system of choice. I'm currently using Mac OS, but the demo that I'm doing today for writing and coding the plugin is going to be on Ubuntu. And if you don't have a 3.6 version of Python or greater, you can go to the pyenv installer and install that, and then from there you can install whatever version of Python you want, which is isolated on your system, that it doesn't pollute the rest of your system's Python version that you have installed. So it keeps it separate. One of the other things you will need to have virtualenv installed, which is a mechanism within the Python landscape that allows you to create a directory where all of your applications and libraries that are that you want to install that are Python into a separate directory, which does not, again, pollute your system level Python libraries. It keeps your system nice and clean. You will need Git, you will need Make, and if you want to publish your plugin to the pypi.org site, which is where I publish all of my APRSD plugins, then you will need to create an account for that. So if you have any intentions on doing that, I would go ahead and do that now. All right, so let's set up an environment so that way we can develop our APRSD plugin. We're just going to be writing a really simple one today called Hello World, but I'm going to walk you through some of the more advanced features of developing the plugins that exist today. As of this writing, APRSD is 2.5.4, I believe, that is released, so everything is going to be based upon that. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to create a virtual environment that we can install a couple things that we're going to need for creating our project. One is cookie cutter, and the other one is pre-commit, and I'll walk you through what those things are. So let's create a virtual environment. You see I have an empty directory here, and so call virtualenv and then the directory where you want your virtual environment to be. And I typically call it .venv for no particular reason. You could call it foo if you wanted to. Doesn't matter. So that's all that's needed to create that virtual environment. Now you need to activate it, so that way any Python install commands, pip install, will go into that virtual environment instead of trying to be installed as a system level library. So we activate it by saying source then bin activate, and you can see on my prompt, which I'm using the Starship prompt in Z shell, you can see that it has a virtual environment registered and ready to go. So the next thing that we need to do is install Cookie Cutter. And Cookie Cutter is an application in the Python landscape that allows you to use templates to create projects from. And the reason why it will be very handy, I will show you very shortly. But to install that, we do pip install cookie cutter. And cookie cutter is what you're going to run that will generate your full-blown APRSD Python project with so many things already set up for you that it makes developing the plugin very simple and very straightforward. All right, so cookie cutter is installed. Now the next thing we need to do is install pre-commit, and I'll talk about that next. So we just do pip install pre-commit. Pre-commit is a hook mechanism that is used within the Git landscape to run some checks on your code prior to you committing changes to your Git repository. And so we use that in APRSD to do basic syntax checking and format checking and unit test running and things like that. So that way when we know we commit our changes to our local repository, that the code is kosher basically. All right, so we've got that done. Now we installed the 2 requirements. Now the next thing to do is to run cookie cutter to build automatically our plugin project. And this plugin project is going to create a directory structure that is ready for development. And also, if you wanted to, right out of the gate, you can publish that directly to Pipey immediately. It's ready to go. So how to run cookie cutter is just run cookie cutter and then give it a template that you want to run against. And this template is one that I created for the community for creating APRSD plugin projects, which is what we're doing today. So here's the URL, which I've copied here and highlighted. It's on my GitHub account, github.com/hemna/cookie-cutter-APRSD-plugin. So you just need to copy that text, paste it in here, and it's going to ask you, if you've done this already before, it's going to ask you if you want to download it again. I'm going to do it again. All right, so the next thing it does is it walks you through the template process of creating your project, and it's going to ask you some questions, and those questions are going to be populated inside of the plugin project itself. So my full name, my email address, I'll just say foo@bar.com for now. You would enter your email address. This is used later. My GitHub username is Hemna. A friendly name. So this is like a human readable short description of what your project is. So my ham radio APRSD hello world plugin. Okay, so now you're going to name the plugin, and this string is what is used for when people want to do a pip install of your plugin. They will type this string, and the format that I generally adhere to is the format that you see here, which is APRSD dash the plugin name dash plugin, to denote that this is for APRSD and it's a plugin. You can name it whatever you want it to, but just know that dashes will be turned into underscores and things like that. So anyway, I am just going to say APRSD dash hello plugin, because that's what we're creating today. And this module name is the question that's next. It generates this module name. So this is your Python module. If you're familiar with Python development, this is separate from the project name. This is the actual module name. So when you want to do an import of the module itself into your Python code, this is what you would type. So you'd say import APRSD hello plugin. So that's what we're going to name this one. And then here's another short description, blah, 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 hello world. Okay, so the next thing is the version. And this version is based upon the tags that you put in your Git repository. I'll show you that a little bit later as we get ready to publish it. But The very first version is 0.1.0, so we'll just stick with that for now. You can pick your favorite license, which you want, and I typically do Apache. Okay, the very next thing, this is starting to get into the guts of the actual plugin itself. And APRSD plugins are object-oriented classes, and this is asking you the name of your class that is going to be your plugin itself. So we will call it Hello World Plugin, because that's what we're doing. All right, so this next part here is asking you the type of APRSD plugin that you're going to be creating. And currently, there are two plugin types and a base class. The APRSD plugin base, which is number 3, is the very base parent class of all plugins. If you want to write a new plugin class or a class of plugins, you would choose this. But the majority of you will be choosing number 1, which is the regex command plugin base. And if any of you have used the repeat service or seen my other videos, such as the Twitter plugin that I wrote, the Telegram plugin that I wrote, they all use the regex command plugin. And that basically means this type of plugin uses a regular expression to match against the string that is part of the APRS packet message. And then if it matches on that, then it will pass that packet into your plugin. So say, for example, we want to do Hello World. So what we'll basically do, we'll write a regex to actually look for a message starting with hello or H. And so we're going to use number 1. Number 2, the watch list plugin base, that is something totally different, and I'll do another video about that later. But it's basically, if you want to look for certain call signs on the APRS network and you want to do something with it when they show up, this is the plugin that base class that you want to use. So for now, we're going to use the regular expression command plugin base, which is number 1. All right. So as you can see, that did a bunch of stuff really quickly afterwards. So what it basically does is it creates a whole directory, adds all the files that are needed for a fully functional Python project that is ready to ship to Pipey. And it creates initializes that as a Git repo and adds all the files, commits it. And so if you look at the directory now, you'll see that we have the APRSD Hello plugin directory, which is what our project is and what was just created. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so we're in the APRSD Hello plugin directory, which is what was just created by Cookie Cutter. It's a brand new, fresh project with basically no real functionality in it per se as a plugin, but you could run APRSD and add this plugin into it directly and start using it, and it would function. But we need to make some changes so that way it's going to do what we hope it's going to do, which is Hello World. So anyway, what you see here is the overall directory structure. There's the license file, yes, and a make file. Yes, we do use make, and I'll get to that in a bit. The README file, the requirements. If you know how to do Python development, the requirements.txt is used for specifying all of the Python libraries and other apps dependencies that your plugin needs. So when you ship it and someone says, hey, pip install APRSD Hello plugin, it'll first install all of the dependencies and then install your module itself. All right, so back to the directory structure here. And setup.cfg, setup.py, those are the standard Python files that are needed for creating a fully functional, self-contained Python project that can be uploaded into Pipey. And talks.ini, I'll talk about that here in a little bit. There's also a documentation directory. You can build documentation based off of your source code, so you can have docs as well. So now I know what you guys really want to see is you want to see what does the plugin actually look like, the source code. How do we start actually doing something useful here? All right, so let's go take a look at our actual plugin. So the plugin actually lives inside the module name APRSD Hello Plugin for our project, which is APRSD Hello Plugin with dashes, not underscores. And the main file is APRSD Hello Plugin. You can rename that if you want. I typically do just to make it shorter, but for this demonstration, I'll just leave it as is. And of course, you have the module directory structure init, and the init file actually creates the version string that you can use to display anywhere else later in your plugin. And I would just leave that alone. All right, so let's go actually look at the plugin itself. And this is the file that you're going to be editing to add your features and functionality. All right, so to go over the plugin basics, what you see here is a file that contains our object-oriented Python class, and you can see it's called Hello World. This is what we entered on the command line when we ran cookie cutter to ask for what the name of the plugin class is going to be, and it generated that for us, and it's a child of, or a derivative of, the APRSD regex command plugin base class. All right, so the first few things that we see here is the command regular expression, the command name, and this regular expression is what is going to be matched against every packet that APRSD receives. It's going to match that, or try to match that regular expression against the message text inside that APRS packet itself. And if it matches, then your plugin will get called. So that's why it's important to specify the command regular expression here. So since we are going to be doing Hello World, I will change this from W to lowercase h and uppercase h. So if we get a packet with a message starting with lowercase h or uppercase h, we will get this packet in our plugin. If you don't know regular expressions, I provided a URL here in the template output in your class that you can go learn how to do regular expression matching. It's kind of voodoo, it's kind of magic, and it is what it is. All right, so the next part is the command name. The command name is what is used to show when someone sends a command to APRSD and they enter in a command or a string that doesn't match any of the plugins. APRSD will show the help text. The help text comes back to your radio, and it says you can ask for help on these particular commands or plugins that are enabled. And each of the plugins has its own command name. It's a one-word, very short description of what the actual plugin is. And so it will show this string. So let's change this to hello, because we're doing Hello World. So when you send a command to APRSD, doesn't recognize it, it's going to respond with, hey, we don't recognize that, but here's the list of commands that are available. You can run help on hello if you want to. So that's what that is for. So you should always set that. Enabled equals false. So this setup method here is very important in the life cycle of your plugin class itself. So if you have configuration options, or you want to do some sanity checks during the startup phase of APRSD to ensure that everything is in place so that way your plugin can function correctly, this is the place to do it. So say, for example, you want to make sure that you're writing a plugin that calls some other external API, and you need the request library, or you need that API library available. Well, here's the place to actually ensure that you can import it and can include it and call APIs right here. And so you can do some try catch blocks, and if you fail the catch or get an exception during that sanity check, then what you really want to do is set enable to false. And what that will do is it tells APRSD that this plugin is not really going to work, so don't pass me any packets no matter what. Because you've determined that, hey, my external API that I need to call is not available because it's either not configured correctly, or I can't reach it, or whatever kind of checks you want to do. You know the code later on is not going to work, so we'll just set enable to false. But if you don't need to do any sanity checks at all and don't really care, you can even just delete this function and delete this. But for now, I left it in there as an example of an explanation of really what this function is for. So set enabled is true here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to gloss over create threads just for a second because it's a more advanced capability of the plugins. But the main function that is called when APRSD matches that regular expression in the packet, the process method here, which you see here, is what is called. And this is the main processing function of your plugin itself. And you can see it receives a packet. Well, that packet is basically a Python dictionary, and you can see the output of it and the format of it and all the features of it. But basically, it has a from, it has a message text, a to, and the from is the call sign who sent the actual packet, and the message text itself is what the regular expression matches against. So in our case, if this plugin doesn't receive a string that starts with lowercase h or uppercase h, this process method is not going to get called. But when it does match, process method is called, and then it's up to you to decide what to do with that message. So in our case, if we get a match on that regular expression, we want to respond with, guess what? Hello world. Because that's what this plugin and all it really does. And since we're not really even using the packet yet, we can just ignore these warnings. But I'll talk a little bit about the return value here. The return value is a string. It can be a string, it can be a list of strings, it can actually be an APRSD message object, which I'll talk about later. And if you return a list of strings, each one of those items in that list is a reply that goes out onto the APRS network. So say, for example, in this case here, we respond with a single string hello world. So APRSD is gonna send a message back to the caller, which is in the from, and send that call sign a message, an APRS message of hello world. Now, if I switch this to a list, just to show an example of hello, comma, world. Oops. So this is a list of strings. So in response to the packet that we got from the originating ham call sign and from, we're going to get two messages back. One's going to say hello. The second message is going to say world. So if for whatever reason you need to respond with multiple messages or multiple strings or whatnot in response to a message, this is how you do it. But also note that the APRS network limits how how quickly it will send multiple messages. I think the limit is like 5 within a second. If you send more than 5, it'll start throttling and tossing some of the other messages. So you have to keep this list under 5 if you really want to guarantee that it's going to go through. All right, so let's just keep this simple, switch it back to a single string for now as hello world. All right, so a more advanced feature of APRSD and the plugins is there's a mechanism for creating background threads that you can do whatever you want into, and the plugin can register those threads such that APRSD itself can manage that thread, start it up, and shut it down correctly. And so if you need a thread, a background thread to do something in between receiving packets inside of the process call, you would create a thread, an APRSD thread object, which I'll talk about later, and then you would return that here. So I always wrap it in self.enabled, so if some setup goes wrong, there's no reason to create a background thread because your setup is marking the plugin as basically disabled unless it's true. So we don't need to create a background thread if we're not enabled. I have some examples that I'll show you of some threaded objects, and this is quite a bit more complicated, and you really have to understand what threading, Python threading programming is in order to do that correctly. Anyway, so now we've got our basic structure of our plugin put together, and we are going to match on lowercase h and uppercase h, and we're going to respond with hello world. So what do we do next? So let's see what I got in my slides here. Okay, so I talked about the setup method a little bit. I should have been going through these as I was talking. So yeah, we showed editing the plugin, changing the regex, and the return message. Now the next thing to do is, hey, look at that. Run and test your plugin. So one of the cool features about APRSD itself is it has a mechanism built in such that you can test your plugin straight away without connecting to the APRS network and without the need of sitting there waiting for someone on a ham radio to send you a message. I use this all the time during development of my plugins because it is far easier to do the test development cycle to make sure that what I'm actually writing in code works before I actually make it live. So in our case, we can run APRSD dev test plugin -h. Oh, the next, okay, so I forgot one step. So what we should do next is create an environment so that way we can test our plugin. So if you go back out to your top level of your plugin directory, you will see that there's a make file there, and you can run make dev. This will pull down a make file that understands how to deal with virtual environments for Python. It will create a virtual environment in this directory. It will install all of the dependencies for your plugin in that virtual environment, and then install that plugin as an editable project within that virtual environment, so that way we can do some testing. And so you can see here it's pulling down mostly all of the dependencies for APRSD itself, as well as what we've specified in our requirements.txt for this particular plugin. And so you can see those are all the packages and libraries that are installed from PyP upstream based upon APRSD's requirements.txt. Let's pull them all down, and then it installs the requirements for our particular plugin. So now we have a virtual environment inside of this directory structure here as you can see right there, that virtual environment has what we just installed. So we need to source that next, because the virtual environment that we have sourced and activated was the one that we created to install Cookie Cutter as well as pre-commit. So we want to do development on our plugin. So that's why we do the make dev. All right, so now this virtual environment is the one that is active, and we should be able to have APRSD available to us now. So there we go. All right, so let's do some testing of our plugin. So this is the command that we're going to run, test plugin. And there's some features and command line switches that you could use, but for right now we're just going to do the bare minimum because we want to test our a single run of our plugin. So you do APRSD dev test plugin. Now you have to give it the full Python classified path to that plugin object itself. So it's going to be APRSD underscore hello plugin. That's the package name. Now we need the module name, which is also APRSD hello plugin. And now you need the actual class that we're going to run. And our class is hello world plugin. All right, so if we hit return here, it's not going to work because we haven't sent a message. So the message is the, if you think about this in terms of you're on your ham radio and you're sending a message to APRSD, well, that's what this is here. So we're going to send it a message of hello. And you know that the regular expression that we created in our plugin class is simply looking for a lowercase, a message that starts with a lowercase h or an uppercase h. So we really only need to send it this, but it looks just kind of weird. But when you're on a 10-key handheld APRS enabled radio, it sometimes is difficult to type that out. So most of the plugins, I just look for the first character because then it makes it really easy. So in this case, this should work, knock on wood, and we should get a response back of hello world. So let's give it a try. Hey, there it is. Okay. All right, so what we see here is the log output of APRSD, the dev command, looking for the plugin, loading, creating the plugin object itself, registering it, and then calling it with the message. And you could see that. I gotta sneeze. Hold on. All right, so the log file output from the test plugin command, you could see here. This is the output of the log debug output at the very top of our process function. And then since we just returned hello world, that's what you see right here. So APRSD is going to call that plugin, it's going to call its process method, and anything that it gets back from it is basically what is going to be shown here. So we could verify that our plugin is doing what we want it to do. So it's pretty straightforward, right? So let's change the message just for fun, or even better, just really quickly show that that the regular expression is actually working. So since it's looking for a message that starts with lowercase h or uppercase h, we'll give it something else so you can see what it looks like here, because I know sometimes that I forget to put the correct message in, and I'm like, why is my plugin not running? Well, let's just try sending it something else. So you can see that the plugin loads correctly, but there's no return value. There's no message coming back from the plugin. Well, it's because the regular expression can't match on this message of quit So it really never will get called, which is what you expect and what you want, really, in the case of this particular plugin. You can create regular expressions that match on anything if you want. You want to see all packets. It's just really kind of up to you on how you want to develop your plugin. All right, so now that was the testing of the plugin. All right, let's go back and look at the process method. So APRSD hello plugin, APRSD hello plugin. So you'll notice at the top of our process method, I have a function call called log.info. And at the top of the plugin file itself is this creation of this log variable. And this gets you a handle on the logging mechanism built into Python that APRSD configures and stands up based upon your config. And you can use this for debugging and outputting anything that might be relevant to the normal execution of your plugin code. By default, the default level of APRSD is info. So if you want to put in a bunch of debugging logs, you would say log.debug something. And if you start APRSD without specifying the log level as debug, these entries just won't even get shown. So let's put in a new one here. We'll just say log. We are about to exit. Return is, and let's do something interesting here. Format reply. Okay. So we're going to say reply equals hello again. And we'll change this to reply. Okay, so this basically is a way for you to log to the log file right before we return from this process command. Okay. So now we're going to call APRSD again, and the regex didn't match because we passed it the quit command. So we need to pass it in a H, hi. So we should get hello again. And since we did not specify the debug level as debug, we didn't see that debug entry, right? We only see all the infos. So let's go set the log level. Log level debug. Now we should see that new log entry. Yep, here we go. So you can see this is the new log entry, and it's in debug, and it shows you what line of your module or your plugin where that log entry actually is. So this is a really good way for you to output some relevant information or debugging info when you're writing your plugin. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the return values previously. Yes, let's talk just a little bit. Well, I guess we already did talk about create threads a little bit. I do have some examples online of threaded plugins that require some background processing. And let's see, I don't have any of them checked out, but let's see. All right, so let's talk about that just a little bit. Let's go back and look at our plugin. All right, so the create threads. This is an advanced feature of the plugins that allows the plugin developer a mechanism for creating background threads that do some processing out of band of receiving packets from the APRS network. My Telegram and Twitter plugins need that. The email plugin in APRSD uses this because in between receiving requests to check or send email from a radio in APRSD, there's actually a background thread that checks email from the email server, and when a new email comes through, it recognizes it and then immediately sends the owner of that APRSD instance a notification that, hey, so-and-so sent you an email, here it is. Obviously that can only happen in the background because you don't want to do that checking when you receive a packet. Maybe you do, I don't know, but this threading mechanism provides you a way of doing that. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a second plugin development video to talk a little bit more about that and show some examples of it. But just know that there is a mechanism built into the plugin development that you can create a background thread that does whatever you want to. And there's some gotchas along with that with threading, and it's a more advanced topic. You have to understand what threading actually is and how to do that correctly within Python, so that way you don't create deadlocks, and you need to share information between whoever created the thread, which is in our case the plugin class. Sometimes you want to pass information back and forth, and so that's more of an advanced topic, and so I think I'm going to do that in a second video. And you can see I provide a couple of URLs here of examples. You can just pause the video, or I'll put this in the description of today's video that shows, you know, some examples of where you can actually go look at the threads. All right, so hey, we're pretty happy. We're stoked with our plugin. We're so stoked and happy that we're replying with hello again. I think we're going to keep that as is. And now, what do we want to do next? We want to publish this because we've already tested it. And if we fired up APRSD, we could actually configure APRSD to use our plugin, but it needs to be installable for other people. So one way to do that is to publish it to Pipey. So, as you can imagine, there is a mechanism built in to the makefile that will basically collate your Python project into a zip file and then uploads that to Pipey. But as I said at the very beginning of the video, you need to have your own Pipey account. So this is when it would be utilized. So we've made all of our changes. I'm using Git here to show that we have modified this file. These are the changes. So we should probably commit these because we're totally done with this and we want to ship it. So I'm just going to say git commit-a, which means commit all the files. We did a quick processing, and the pre-commits will sometimes modify the file to make sure it fits within Python standards. So that's what it did. It just said, hey, we modified the process the file. So we have to do another commit now. Git add. We're going to add that, and then we'll do a commit, and it's good to go. And now we can write our commit message. Hey, first working version of Hello World plugin. It's a really crappy commit message, but whatever. So now everything is committed, ready to go. We want to ship this. So what do we do next? So if you run make, you can see that you can do upload, which is upload a new version of the plugin. You can do build. So since I know we're just ready to ship this, we can just do make upload. And it's going to go through a whole set of tests to ensure that it's compliant with, you know, PEP 8, Python PEP 8 formatting standards, as well as some unit tests, which I didn't show how to write those here, but the test directory at the top level of your plugin directory is where you would put all of your unit tests. If you're like me, sometimes I write unit tests, sometimes I don't. On my personal projects, I don't. For work, I do, absolutely. And it looks like this failed because there's a dependency. Yay! All right, so I guess I have to resolve this. And all right, I'll be right back in a second. All right, so I'm back. I was able to resolve the issue that you guys saw just a second ago, and it was an issue with Ubuntu missing packages and whatnot, and that shouldn't affect you guys at all who are running this. So now I'll show you how you can do a packaging and uploading of your project. So I was showing you make upload previously, but the gist of it basically is the same thing as make build. Make upload runs make build, and then the artifacts that it creates after it are uploaded to Pipey, and it asks you to, provide your login and password for that. So there's no reason for me to show you that. As long as you've created your pipey.org account, make upload should work just like it does with make build here. And so what make build does is it will create a virtual environment for you if you don't have one already, and then go through the process of running unit tests and some Python PEP8 tests to make sure it conforms to generic Python standards, and then it will zip it all up into a zip file and put it in the dist directory, and then from there you can upload it directly if you know how to do that, or you can just run make upload and it will do it all for you. And then after that, then you can, anybody that is made aware of your plugin at home can run pip install APRSD-hello plugin, and they can respond with hello again as well. So that basically boils down and covers the majority of what you need to do to develop your plugins. And if you have any questions, feel free to respond on YouTube or get in touch with me on Slack. You can ask any questions that you want or whatnot. And if you find any of this useful, if you like it, check out my Patreon page, patreon.org, WB4BOR, and if you have any more requests for other plugins, future plugins, I have some in the works that I'm working on for future videos. But if you have anything in particular, or if you have plugins that you've written as a result of this video, then get in touch with me. I'd love to make a video showing everybody else's plugins. That would be really awesome. Anyway, we'll see this through here, and then we'll call it for the day. So what it's really running through right now is this Py3.7. That's running through all of the Python unit tests that are written, which we didn't really write any for this demonstration, but after it's done with that, it'll do a format check, a lint check, and then after all of those pass is when it will zip everything up and create that artifact for you. So we'll just hang back and wait for that to do its thing. I'll probably fast forward this. If you like my channel, like the content, like APRSD, please feel free to like and subscribe, all that nonsense. There it goes. As you can see, it finished running all the unit tests. Now it's actually packaging everything up. It generates a new change log. It generates a new authors file for people that have done git commit. There it is. It's done. Twine is the app which is used to either check and validate a packaged project that is ready for Pipey. And you can see the artifacts, which is a GZ file, as well as the wheel, which is all the dependencies wrapped up into one single file in the dist directory. We can look at those here. So here it is. And if you wanted to upload this to Pipey, you would just do twine upload, star from this directory, and it'll walk you through the process. Well, I don't have it installed, so I can. Anyway, you would. Let's just go ahead and do that. Source, then activate. I think I already have it in here. Twine upload list star. Yeah, there we go. So here's the case where it's asking for your Pipey username and password. So if you provide valid credentials here, it will actually upload the file and make it perfectly available for everyone in the Python land to see. So I'll show you one more thing, then I'll call it a day. I wanted to show you this really quickly right before I go. If you're still hanging out with me, thank you for sticking around. But I wanted to show you, this is Pipey, at least the web front end for it, and this is where all Python packages that people around the world want to use exist. So I will just do a simple search of APRSD, and you can see that here is the list of all of the plugins that I have written. All of these, as far as I can tell, yes, all of these I have written, as well as APRSD itself is there. And when you do an upload of your package, if anybody searches for APRSD, if you name it the same scheme that I have, APRSD dash plugin name, dash plugin, it'll show up in anybody's searches for APRSD. That's one of the reasons why I also named all of my plugins that way. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, guys, and I will see you next week. Later.